All right, here we go. All right, what's up, guys? Jeff Kamke here with Wealth Energetics. I'm super excited about today's podcast with Vanessa Leto. We've known each other for about a year and a half or so, and her husband Sal have added a ton of value into our lives in so many ways. We're gonna probably get into a lot of that today, and I'm just super excited. She's got a great journey. She's brought herself up from, not living in wealth to wealth and having abundance and being able to help other people through what she does. So thank you, Vanessa, for joining us today. I'm super excited to share some nuggets and share some value with each other on our channel here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Like I was sharing with you a little bit earlier, I'm just so grateful that you're doing this for people, that you get to share your knowledge and experience and so much that you've been building throughout the years and they get to partake in it. So I'm glad that you're doing this and thank you so much for inviting me on.
Absolutely. So I know one of the times we were at dinner together, I think maybe it was in Cleveland last year. You and Sal were sharing a little bit about your story and your humble upbringings and some of the
Mhm.
challenges that made you decide, okay, I want something more for our lives. And you've been on a wonderful success journey. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about your journey and the lessons learned and how you made that kind of shift in your life from where you started to where you guys are at now.
Yeah, wow. Well, there's so much, right? Like there's so much that we experience in our lifetime. And for me, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, in the inner cities of LA. My parents were both immigrants from Mexico. And it was, for me, I always thought I had such an amazing life, because we lived in LA as opposed to a lot of my siblings who were still in Mexico. And like, I'd go visit my family out in a ranch in Mexico, and they're all like herding cattle and milking them and growing vegetation. And I'm seeing my girl cousins like this is what they're doing. So I'd go back to LA, even though there was so much violence, so much drugs around me. I felt like I was just, man, I'm killing it in life, right? So this was my teenage years. I just thought it was so great. Into comparison, right? In comparison as to the way that you go visit family in third world countries, I felt like it was great. And my sister, when I think she was about 21 or 22 years old, she moved over to another city in California, Orange County area, which is, more of a wonderful suburb. It's very beautiful in Huntington Beach. And it's kind of funny because it's only about a 40-mile radius, but I had never gone over there. And, you're living in a bubble. So I was just in this bubble in LA. And when I went over there, I saw these beautiful homes and I'm like, sis, like, how did you like what did you think about like moving over here? We have about a 7 year gap difference between each other, so she was my older sister. And I got really inspired just by those neighborhoods and what I was seeing. And so I started driving around Huntington Beach and I'm seeing yachts and boats all over the place. And I'm like, what is this like? It's completely different from the beaches that I'm going over out in Long Beach. They look like mud water over there, over here it's
Mhm.
just so beautiful. And so I just got inspired. I didn't know what I was missing out in life, like I had such a lack of awareness on what success can look like financially. I had the love with my parents, incredible parents, my siblings, just wonderful siblings, even though I grew up around violence and drugs around me, all this stuff. But like, I never knew success financially. I only knew like success with love and, happiness with my home. Like, and I thought that was sufficient, which it is. But, once you're gonna get married and have your own household, then you start to experience your struggles financially, right? So like that's what happened. That's what was like a huge pivotal point for me in my life, was that now I met my husband when I was 21. Well, before that we were friends for a long time, but we started our, we went to church, so we started our courtship, which is very interesting. But we started a courtship, and we had that for a couple years, and then we got married, and we struggled a lot financially. And to me, I wanted what my sister had, and I was like, how do I get there? Like, I understood my parents struggled financially, but they were at a different level in life. Their success was just coming into the States, getting everything done properly, having their kids here and giving them the opportunities. So for me, it was like, how do I take control of the opportunity? How I take advantage of that opportunity? And so when Sally and I got married, I got pregnant within a couple weeks. I was bedridden. I got really sick. He had to stop his job. I had to quit my job. And man, like we were living in a garage in Linwood, and it was very hard. There was like two different gangs in each corner, so there was a lot of violence happening. There was times we couldn't even come home. We couldn't get into our streets because there was cops blocking everything. I'd get up at 5 a.m. So there's gunshots. I mean, there's crackheads running down the streets at 3 in the morning. You know, it's just so insane. I'm like, Sadak, I don't want to live like this, you know? And like, I know I'm sick. I know you're struggling, like, you know, to get a job, but like, we have to do something. And it was like that rock bottom, you know, like it was that, like, we're here, we have nothing. So honestly, it can't get worse. We can only build ourselves up from here. And so that's where we started. Like, we left our 9 to 5 and we started our entrepreneurial journey because we were both home. I was sick and he had to help me. And then we had my daughter. And it was just like, hey, like, let's just work from here and build something. So that was the beginning of our entrepreneurial journey. But that's a little bit about my background. And my husband as well, he also had very similar backgrounds. He grew up in Compton, California. So he experienced a lot of violence. And I think that that's where it was so beautiful, where we both came together, understanding our backgrounds and our journey, where we're coming from, but having that dream together, having that vision together of like, hey, let's build something. Let's build an empire. Like, it doesn't matter where we're coming from. Like, let's build a huge empire for our family, you know? So that vision was locked in together. And it was just such a beautiful, it's been a beautiful union together. So that's a little bit about us.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
love that. I mean, I love the story. You made me think of a couple things I wrote down in my notes here of some of the training that we've had over the years in personal development. You know,
Mhm.
you can get to that point where you're so sick and tired of being sick and tired that you finally make a decision. And, you know, the podcast I did earlier in the week, we were talking about this kind of same thing as well, of like you mentioned, seeing the nicer homes when you're growing up, like in your teenage years, and
Mhm.
that like stimulates something deep inside of you. Like, I
Yeah.
want more than where I'm at right now. In that process, you know, have you thought back into those moments, like, you know, is it something that was always there with you, do you feel like, of wanting something more, and that stimulated seeing those bigger houses, like, oh, this is the life I want? Or was it just more of a progression as you and Sal got together and just saw more of the lack of what was out there, and you didn't want to partake in the crime and that
Mhm.
what was that journey like of stimulating that more? I mean, was it just seeing those kind of things and just coming to that point of like, this is not for me, and we're making a decision to get ourselves out of it?
Yeah, so like a couple things. One was I wasn't aware. Like, it's kind of silly, but I really wasn't. There was no internet, right? Like, when I was 14 years old, like, it's not, oh yeah, let's just get a computer and everyone has the internet. Like, there was no access for me to be on my phone on Zillow looking at mansions. Like, you really had to know where to go to find a mansion, you know, like,
Yeah.
where do I get inspired? Like, what streets do I go to? And like, none of that was available. And like, so for me, it was not until I went outside of my boundaries, of my limitations. Like, no one had taken me further, no one has taken me above my limitations. So I didn't know I was living limited. Like, I had no
Mm.
awareness. I had such a lack of awareness, right? Like, I was just in my bubble. And I thought that the whole world was like LA, you know? Oh, yeah, everybody just shoots each other and there's violence. And like, you know, it's not like that now, but some areas, but as common as it was before, you know, there was a lot of segregation with races and stuff. And so like, you saw a lot of violence, a lot of gangs. And so that, when I had my daughter, I didn't want that anymore. So one, I was able to remove a lot of my limitations when I saw um, more, like in other neighborhoods. Like, when I got exposed to other neighborhoods, I was like, wow, this is amazing. This exists. You know, I want this. Like, why don't I, like, why had I never seen this before? Well, because I never had to drive over there. No one knew me to invite me over there. My
Mhm.
parents didn't like, hey, let's just go to Huntington Beach. Like, no, they didn't even speak English. So why do they want to go to Huntington Beach? Right. So like, they were just stuck in their bubble. And so like, I was stuck in that bubble until I got exposed. And then when I had my daughter, and my awareness was even more now, because now I had someone that I had to take care of. So my awareness to everything that was happening around me was more, right? Like, now you have like this mama bear instinct, like, hey, don't come near my kid, as opposed to it was just me by myself. Oh, okay, like, I'm used to this, but now it's like my kid. Like, I don't want to expose my children to this. Like, I want to get out of here. So this new, like, kind of just desperation inside of me grew, like, hey, let's get out of here. And so like it was that, like, now the dream, hey, there's something more. And like I became desperate. Like I became like, I have a vision. I want this now. I want to make whatever I can do. Like I want to make it happen. Like it just kind of like, you get tired, how you said, like you're tired of being tired, but I was desperate to get out of that situation. And so like I think it was like a huge push into that life of entrepreneurship for us. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So once you get to that point, I'm always fascinated by these stories because I love understanding how the mind works and how we get tipped kind of into success. And it's not a clean journey for most people. And I would suspect
Mhm.
not the same for you, or just like
Yeah.
you got sick and tired, and the next day, like you're just crushing it. So I'd love to know a little bit about your journey of like you're desperate, you're wanting a change, you have a vision, those seeds have been
Mhm.
planted for more in your life.
Yeah.
What did it look like to navigate that? 'Cause I mean, I talk to people all the time that they have a vision, and for some people it's hard to get going. For myself, I've had hard challenges where you want the vision and you've got the big dream, and maybe there isn't enough desire. Maybe you haven't hit rock bottom yet in order to
Mhm.
get enough momentum to get you where you want to go. So, what was that journey like for you and Sal to, turn the corner and start on that new path of creating abundance and just creating a different life for yourselves?
Yeah. So one of the things that I love how you said is like we've all hit rock bottom. And so on that point, I do want to touch like we are in leadership, Sal and I, yourself. And so I never take away people's rock bottom. So that's one thing that I just want to throw out there. Like
Yeah.
everybody needs to hit that rock bottom. And a lot of times we see people that we love in their rock bottoms and we want to go and be their savior, and you're taking away their opportunity. So like I just want to throw that, like, don't do that. Let them figure it out, because we all can, many of us have. And so like rock bottoms are very important because those are people's pivotal moments in life, right? So like we weren't rock bottom. We were like, we had no money to our name. We were late on our rent and we're living in a garage. I mean, our rent was like $500. We couldn't even pay that. We were struggling so bad. And we just started like looking for opportunity. We were like, what can we do? What can we create here from home? Like I said, we didn't have much access to a lot of like, I think the touch screens were barely coming around at this time. Like I was like 22, and I think touch screens were coming around. We're like, okay, we can make a business from here. Like, what do we do? And so like we just started asking, kind of like asking around and looking. And so this, it just so happened that this pastor that we knew at this time called Sal, and he said, hey, I want to take you to a business meeting. And he's like, a business meeting, like, what is this, and he's like, yeah, let me pick you up, and I want to, show you this business that I'm doing. And at this time, this was network marketing. And
Hmm.
so we were like, well, should you go? Because I was sick at home. I'm like, I don't know, just go check it out. He offered you a free dinner. Go get a free dinner,
Right.
So we were a little bit more like, hey, free dinner, go for it, But so he ended up going, and it was a network marketing meeting, and it was prepaid legal at this time, if anybody is familiar with the industry. And one thing that this company had right was the leadership.
Mhm.
They taught a lot about personal development. And so for us, it was like, look, even if we don't hit it hard in business in this venture, like this is our first exposure to personal development. Like we had not heard about personal development. We had not heard of Jim Rohn. We had not heard of just any of these amazing authors, of John Maxwell. Like we knew nothing. And so we started getting exposed to these incredible leaders and just mentorship. And they were building, a lot of them had come from nothing. And now they're building legacy. Now they're having a six-figure years, seven-figure years. And we're like, wow, at least like something sparked where it's like, okay, it's possible. First, we knew we wanted it. Second, we didn't know how we were going to get there. And now we're getting to expose ourselves to people that are showing us it's possible. So now we kind of see like, okay, we might have to build our own path, but at least we've seen that the paths have been carved by other people, that it's not impossible, right? So we started seeing the possibilities for our life. So we started with that. We started with network marketing, and it was very hard because we didn't have a network. We didn't know people that wanted to be entrepreneurs. All we knew was like all these people from the streets in LA, and like we would tell them about it, and nobody wanted to hear. Like they
Right.
didn't have an entrepreneurial spirit. They're like, you're scamming me, or what is this, So like we just kept trying to network. We kept trying to like even build flyers and go out to the streets and like show people like this was like legal insurance, right? So we're like, hey, do you want legal insurance? Like nobody wants legal insurance. So it was very difficult, but we started building little by little, mostly Sal more than myself, because at this time I was still pretty sick. And then yeah, like we just kept going from then that company sold, we went into another company, and then you know, if like as many people who have entrepreneurial journeys, it goes from one thing to another, just trying to discover like what can I make happen, what can I make work for myself. And everything was just like barely scraping by, barely making like, you know, $1,000 here to pay the bills. Now you're like finally get a good check, but you're like three months behind, you know. And so like we started getting exposed to real estate, we started getting exposed to e-commerce, we started getting exposed to just traditional business and construction stuff. Like we were just like, hey, whatever we can do. We were driving around hours and hours just trying to meet with people a day. You know, now I had my daughter at this time, and I got pregnant with my son just a few months after that. So we're like, crap, now we have two kids on the way. Like we really need to make something happen, right? So like the level of determination was just growing and growing and growing within us, you know. So like one of the things that we did know was that we were in it. Like we were like, this is what we want to do. You know, we were like sold out to our dream. It wasn't like we're gonna work towards this for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then if it doesn't work, like we're gonna give up. Like we worked as a team, and I think that that's very important. Like when whatever you decide that you're gonna do, that you go towards it until it happens. Because I feel like it's like a lot of people stop right before the gold, right? It's like
Mm.
you don't know when it's gonna happen. Like nobody knows it's when it's gonna happen. We didn't know when it was gonna happen for us, but like we just kept going and going and tag teaming. Like, hey, you know what? Maybe I need to go pick up a part-time job. Like, okay, go do that while I take care of the kids. Or like, hey, I need to go do this conference for 3 weeks. Like, all right, cool. Like I'm gonna stay with the kids. Like you're a team. You're a team with your partner, and you're building an empire together. And you need to tag team sometimes, you know. And a lot of people, they get this like kind of like, what about me, or like this and that. It's like you're a team, you're a unit. You need to work as a unit, you know. And like we worked towards it until, you know, gratefully, like it, you know, we hit great success. But like during those years, man, it was tough. There was crying, there was anger, there was fighting, like all of that, you know. There was disassociating ourselves with our family. There was new associations that we wanted to achieve. And like all of that is just part of the journey. Like the journey is not easy, but I think you have to be determined since the beginning that that's what you want. Otherwise, just don't even sign up for it, you know, because it is going to be, you know, people say sacrifice, but it's an investment. It is an investment, and you don't know when that investment is going to give you a good ROI, and you don't know how long that investment needs to go in for, you know. Like we signed up for it, but we didn't know how long it was going to take, you know. So that's a lot of our progress and our journey towards making something happen for ourselves, you know.
That's awesome. You
Yeah.
made me think of I don't remember where the quote comes from, but the entrepreneurship is the ultimate spiritual journey. You know, and as you were just laying out those things, that knowing, you know, the journey that I've been through, which isn't maybe nearly as extreme on the spectrum of what you and
Mhm.
Sal grew up in, but you know, just knowing that like you go through hell sometimes. You
Yeah.
have the self-doubts, you go through your own growth, you have issues with your spouse and your family and your kids, and there's lack of harmony and there's frustration and you want to quit. And those are like natural things that you go through as part of the journey and as part of your growth in becoming, you know, a superior version of yourself. Is
Mhm.
have that desire that gets planted, and then you are going after that. And it's, you know, a lot of the cliche phrases that you hear, but it's so true of, you know, success is, you know, more about the journey than it is the destination. And the growth that takes place is the big thing. And it's hard sometimes to, you know, when you're in the midst of that hard journey, to feel good about the hard journey. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, make it not hurt so bad and get through that. So I'd love to know, like, as you guys went through that and you had the difficult moments, did you have tools? Was it just good mentorship? Was it just the determination and the vision that pulled you through? Like, how did you navigate that? I mean, you said you had the challenges, so what was it that helped you go through that? Because I think that's a big stumbling block for so many people on their journey for success, and whatever their definition of it is they get to a point where they do give up. They it's not
Mhm.
worth it. I've got family members that they were entrepreneurs and they didn't maybe have the education enough on how to, systematize a business or whatever, and they gave that vision up, and then they settled for a business, or not even a business, a job, went back to being
Mhm.
an employee that is sucking the life out of them and their family, but they
Yeah.
gave up, and they were probably, just a mentor away or a course away from getting the right information,
Yeah.
things fit so that they could excel with what their vision was. So I just love to hear, how you guys navigated some of those trials.
Yeah. I think one of the kind of like the pull, it was like, what is it like? I think like the curiosity,
Mm,
like what is it like to taste success? And like those were the things that we would talk about. Like one of the conversations that we had, and that's why, if somebody's starting an entrepreneurial journey, I do like network marketing in that sense, because you do get exposed in conferences with people who are probably making 6 7 figures in their entrepreneur journey, and you're barely getting started, and they're willing to exchange some nuggets, or like you're able to learn, and so like I like it for that, for a beginning journey, because we learned so much through it, and we were always in rooms that we wouldn't have been in, like I worked at a construction office, and so you think the owner who's over here making, all this money is going to come and talk to me and sit with me and be like, hey, let me have a Zoom call with you and like mentor you. He's going to be like,
right.
I don't even
Right.
want to talk to her, like, who is she? So, he probably didn't even remember my name. Like, I'm just one of his employees. And so, like, I liked it for that. So getting in rooms was very, very important. Like getting in rooms where you just got to hear other people's stories, and now we have podcasts, YouTube, like all those things, they feed you so much. So it's so important during those times to feed yourself, because you are going to go through the doubts, you are going to go through the fears, you are going to go through seasons where you have no electricity. Like we went through that where it was freaking cold. I'm not sitting there like, oh, this journey, it's so amazing, and I'm freezing my butt through the night. It's like it's horrible. Like, or what am I going to eat, or like those things, and then like your pride kicks in. Like I'm trying to build my entrepreneurial journey, my family's not supporting me, how am I going to ask them for money? Like you can't, and so it was hard, but having people who would feed us their spirit of like courage and faith, like that was so important for us, because it was so hard. And then also like that, like me and Sal will always talk about like, what does it feel like to have money? And we would be like, do you think that people that have money think about money? And so we would dream and bounce off these dreams. And those were like exciting things for us, when we were going through our struggles, So it was just like enlightening that dream, like making it fun, making it exciting, and having people that would feed us faith, that would feed us encouragement, because there's times where you just feel alone, and like the people that were with you in the beginning are not going to be with you 2 years later or 3 years later, so it's like those things are just so important, and you know what you need. I think inside everyone knows what they need, and it's like, I think that's why it's so important too with your spouse. Like if you're in this together, like, hey, what do you need? Like, what can I do to be supportive in this journey? And like, here's what I need, because this is long time journey, and even when you do make it, when you do have a breakthrough in your business, like there's going to be another level to get to. It's like a video game. Like you think you've made it like 10 levels in, and you're like, oh crap, there's 20 levels. Like we can only grow from here. So it's important to know like who's going to be with you during this journey. Like how are you guys going to help each other? How are you guys going to support each other? Like what do you need when you're having a stressful night, when you're full of doubt and you come to bed and you're like, man, you know what, I just don't feel like I can do this anymore. And it's like you need that encouragement from your spouse, or you're like, you need, hey, tomorrow let's just take the day off and maybe we go on a run, or maybe we go on a hike. Like what are things and tools that, or like meditation, prayer, like let's feed that, so like it all depends on someone, right? What do they need to get to the next level? Or like maybe, hey, you know what, like maybe you're feeling this because now you need to go to a conference where you can learn something more, like maybe taking another class. Like I'm taking classes right now on trading. I love trading, my husband's a great trader, but I still want to keep learning. So it's just like when you hit a roadblock, what do you need at that point? You know, a supportive spouse, a supportive mentor, a room full of people that are just excited, or, you know, like, what do you need? A run, a jog, like meditation, prayer. So it's like you need to know what are your tools to get to the next level, because there's always going to be next levels. Like, you don't make it, right? And so, like, I think that where I've made it right now, I would hate to stay here forever. Like, as much as I love my life, like, I want to know that I'm growing. So, like, by the time I'm 60, it's like I at least want to be like, you know, 10 times more than what I am right now. Like, my family, my kids, like, I want us to be 10 times more. So there's always going to be a level of growth, you know? So just
Absolutely.
know your tools, like, know what you need, like, know yourself, get to know yourself, get to love yourself, so that you can love yourself enough to make your dreams a reality. You know, like, they're your dreams, it's your journey. Like, who cares about other people's opinions? Like, their opinions don't matter, because it's your journey. And so, like, that's why through our journey we had to know who to disconnect from. And that's important, that you love yourself enough to make your dreams happen. Yeah.
So true.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna start like getting all fired up, but like,
Right. Go, go, go. Yeah.
yes.
No, you made me think of the last day of my senior year of high school. My history teacher, he came around and like spoke to every one of us, and he like, put his hand on my shoulder and was like, Jeff, I know what you want out of life yet. You just haven't figured it out. And I remember
Mm.
at the time, like, I don't know what the heck that means, but sure. And then as you get
Yeah.
into adulthood, you're like, oh my gosh, he was so spot on. And as you've been describing your journey, it makes me think of mine, and like, how you just have, there's a vision of more that you,
Hmm.
and it's always been there, from the minute it got sparked, it's always been there. And I know for me, when I was growing up in like the church, and I don't know if you've had any experience like this or not, but for me, there was a lot of confusion from the church on if you had a desire for certain things, they made you almost second guess, like, no, that's probably of the devil. Like the devil's trying to get you off course. And you probably really need to like repent and make sure that's God's will in your life. And it was always like, no, but this isn't of mine. This is like something outside of myself that is a call for something more to give and to become the fullest version of myself. And impact other people through that. Like I have a purpose, and it needs to
Hmm.
be shared with other people and stimulated. And I think of, as you've been describing everything with you guys, it's like that has to come out. Like you
Yeah.
have to discover that. And one of my mentors a few years ago, he talked about like when you can like truly identify what your calling is and your purpose or the desires of your heart, however you want to say it, like it's literally like fabric of a cloak that you're putting on. Like it's actually physically part of you. It's part of your energy field. And that
Yeah.
if you're not in alignment with it, you're not moving towards it, there's like, interference that it creates in your body. Like it creates conflict in your mind and in your body because you're not in congruency with a true part of you are
Hmm.
designed for. So if you're not on that journey, even though the journey can suck sometimes, I think and I don't know if everybody does, but I mean, those of us like-minded that we're talking like this today, there's a knowingness when you're not in that alignment. And I love the tip of you need to know yourself and learn how you function, learn how you operate, and discover parts of yourself, and learn how to get better with your intuition and learn your emotional system and
Hmm.
how to know, should I do this or shouldn't I not? And seeing through illusions and being able to discover like, okay, the hidden lessons here that might not meet the eye logically, or there's just so much of that you have to develop and cultivate to get to that next level. I love the stuff that you're sharing from your journey. So I'd love to know, okay, what was the, point for you guys? You've been working. What was the process like for where it finally did hit? Was it just you've just been doing the right things long enough consistently, and then finally, the sparks lit and everything caught on fire? Is there any specific things that you guys did that made that happen? Was it good mentorship, or what did that process look like to go from, struggling and trying to like, oh my gosh, here it is?
Yeah. So, um, I love what you were saying, like, on how we're energy, right? Like, we are energy, and like, we have to get to a certain level of vibration to be able to attract that level of vibration. And there's an amazing video on YouTube where a professor has, certain vibration, magnetic vibration, right? Some certain magnets. And so, like, they can't come together unless they're the equal hertz, right? And so like, I think it's called hertz, right? So like then those come together, and if you put different ones, they're either like they're gonna repel, right? Or they're just like not even gonna they won't even get close, right? And so it's like, that is true, that is who we are. And so like, I think during our journey, we tried so hard with all the talents that we had. Like, so when I turned 17, I started going to a youth program, and this is where I met Sal. And I fell in love with helping youth because I felt like this community was outside of like all the other friends that I kind of grew up with. And it provided me such sense of support and love. And so I wanted to offer that to the other youth, right? So like I started going into high schools and speaking, and like we just got into leadership like so young. And I just wanted to help people. And that's why I think other business ventures have been so easy, because naturally, like I just wanted to help people, right? And
Mhm.
so like our level of energy through the journey was like, what can I use with all my talents? Like I have all these talents, and I can speak, and I can do this, and I can do that, and like like I'm full of energy from like morning to night, like. But those were our talents until we realized like there's something greater than us. Like, who do we need to become? Who do we need to be? What type of energy do we need to tap into? So it's like, sit down. There's something greater than you here. There's something greater than your energy. And so like, and in order to tap into that, who do you need to become? And for us, it was that once we were ready to tap into like, and how you were saying like the church makes you feel like you're not worthy, or you shouldn't be having this, and those are love of the world and blah blah blah. Well, we are in the world. And you know how some people say, I'd rather cry in my Lamborghini, so like I'd rather cry in my Lamborghini like than a broke down car on the side of the road. I'm sorry, but I would, because I see all the opportunities with financial abundance. Like I see so many opportunities to help people. I do every Christmas, and now I'm going to start Easter's as well. But every Christmas I help orphanages in Africa, in Mexico, in Croatia, and beautiful videos. And this last year we were able to do assistance for the homeless as well. So all those things that I do by myself, like I don't need the assistance. I don't need to collect from anybody. Like I talk to my friends in those countries, and we set this up. Like that is so beautiful to see the videos and pictures of these people that are being fed, kids that are getting gifts because they're orphanages and they feel like nobody cares about them. And like now they have food for the next few months. Like I want to do that. I believe
Mhm.
that that is the love of God. I believe that that is the joy of God when we're able to do that, right?
Mhm.
So for me, it was like, who do we need to become to get to this level that we want to be in, right? Because so far it's just a dream and it's such a vision board, but we want it. How do we attract that? How do we become that magnet that now it's just like we're stuck with it, right? And so like that's something very very important, is like you want this dream, you want this life, but who do you need to become? Because at the end of the day, that's what's important, because you only want to grow from there. You don't want to go backwards, right? And so like us becoming that is where we started seeing big shifts, where it was like there's something greater than us. Like let's sit down and let's see what happens when we move in this energetically, where we move and like allowing things, when we move with our intuition, when we're meeting with people that we feel led to meet with, when we're doing business that we feel led to meet with. Because a lot of people, they get jobs, they get spouses, they get friendships, they get into like businesses that they have no business doing, that they're not even aligned with, but they get into it because they're like, this is going to be it. And they move out of desperation instead of like their conscious decisions, instead of their intuition and their spiritual alignment. And therefore it doesn't prosper. And it's so deep. It gets so deep. It's like, I know that it's not how you say, like it sounds cliche, but it's so true, because you have to be aligned with that. You have to be aligned with your business. You have to be aligned. And it doesn't mean that like, oh, but I felt aligned and it still didn't work out. No, maybe it's the next door to get to where you need to be. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that like, okay, this is it. But like those movements allowed us to start really getting into rooms that we would have not been able to get into by ourselves. Like it was just like divine, energetic, different rooms that we were brought into. Like how did we end up here? Like out in this place, and all of a sudden someone's calling me and they're like there too. Like, what the heck? Like, things that are way out of your hands, you know? And so it's like there is a time where you can use your natural given abilities, but there comes a time where, like, man, now you need to tap into your spiritual abilities because they're powerful, you know? So getting into that is very incredible. And so that's where we've been for, like, even now, you know, I think that's what Sal's doing right now. He's like doing some meditation with our spiritual guide, because it's just so important. It's so important for us to be able to move in that, and our not releasing our intuition, you know, not releasing who we truly are. And when I think of what the church told us, and what God really, really believes about us, if I think of my daughter, I don't ever think of suffering for her. Like, I think of, and not that to say like, oh, suffering is bad, but like, I think of nothing but the greatest for her, you know? And so I think of, like, she's incredible. And I always tell her, like, you're just so beautiful. You're just so incredible. Like, you can do it all. Like, what do you want to do? Last night we were doing goal settings. Like, it's like, I want her to see how great she is, you know? And I think that that's how God feels about us. Like, that you are so great. Why would you be any less? Why would you do any less, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of like, I know it's, I think, how do we hit it, or how do you do it? I think that it's not the same for everybody, you know? And I think that we all kind of know, but it's not the same for everybody, you know? So I can't just be like, this is what you need to do to get there. Like, it's not the same for everybody, but it comes to a point where it's no longer your physical self, you know? It's something beyond that that gets you there, you know? If that makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the things you just laid out there, part of what I've done when we changed to our new insurance agency, part of what I've had a conflict with the last several years is we've been in the financial space, but that's not all that's on my heart. That's not the full message that I want to share. My background before that was bioenergetics. I've pulled certifications in a couple different bioenergetic techniques, and personal development is a huge part of my life. It got introduced to me, 13 years ago. And for me, one of my first mentors in the financial space, and really both of my main mentors, one's been a more in-person one, more's been through books and the content that they produce, but it's all about the holistic nature of moving forward in life and the goals that we have. And it can't just be about learning marketing. It can't be just about learning how to trade like you guys do. It can't be just a singular focus on the action steps. It has to be the inner work as well. You have to develop the inner self and increase your vibration and your consciousness and discard the things that are no longer serving you. And I think back to you get to the point where you can't remember what mentor said what, but I know one of the great points that one of them made was the artist, centuries ago, Michelangelo created a sculpture of David. Michelangelo was quoted as saying, "I removed everything that wasn't David." So he started with this big block and he chipped away everything that wasn't David. Like, there was an essence in that block that Michelangelo could tap into. I got rid of everything that wasn't David and to get to the pure, amazing sculpture that it was. And the mentor shared that at like a seminar about, we need to discard the things that aren't truly a part of us. It might be our parents' beliefs. It might be things from society. It might be our own experiences and our own traumas that they're not serving our greatest good. They're not serving where we ultimately want to go. We have to do that internal work. And when you do, that unlocks the key for abundance to flow in your life. And the things that you do have as a desire that maybe seemed out of reach or impossible to obtain, they start to become, the right people, places, circumstances come into play, because you're no longer interfering with the manifestation of that. I know that can sound like, ooh, super spiritual, but it is the process. You talk to enough people, that is the recipe to get there. You have to do the inner work. And I say this because I know it. I don't always do it as much as I should. It's one of those things that it's a constant discipline to master that inner work. But when you do, that is the evolution. That is, why can't I make this happen? Well, you're too focused outwardly. You're too focused on the actions, and those things are important. But if you're not doing the inner work, one of my financial mentors said, I can develop a great financial strategy for somebody, but if they don't do the inner work, they're going to screw it up the first week. And that happens so often in life where it happens. I'm sure you guys saw it all the time in network
Yeah.
marketing. People that wanted to succeed and crush it in the business, but they weren't doing the inner work, and they probably fell flat on their face at some point. Maybe that was the stimulus that they needed to fall flat on their face to finally like, oh, I do need to, improve in these areas and get rid of these beliefs that are holding me back or these fears or whatever that is. And so it's great that, we're on the same page. I knew we were, but it's just cool to hear these little nuggets of like, oh yeah, that is because so many people are looking for that recipe of like, oh, what do I do first, Vanessa, to get me to that $1 million a year income? What do I need to do first, second, and third? It's like, no. You have to develop yourself. You have to know yourself. And if you don't spend the time, getting vulnerable with yourself and learning yourself and tuning in and go through the trial and error of that process. It's what we all go through. And then when you develop those strengths, who you are, and that knowingness of this is what I need to do, this is what I don't need to do, this is a definite no, this is a heck yes, I need to move forward with this, then life starts to become more magical and the right people align because you can feel it. You talk to somebody, you feel it energetically. Yeah, this person's in complete alignment. What they say, I know I need to move forward here. And like you mentioned, one of my mentors I know talks about, you mentioned it, like I followed my gut, but it blew up in my face. Like I must have been following my gut. And it's like, no. That's the right path for you. I can remember years ago when I was young and had acne really bad, my mom would always say, son, God's going to use this to your advantage. Something good is going to come out of this. And sometimes we don't see the bad things as the seeds for ultimate greatness, but they are if you're willing to look for it and not get wrapped up in the negative emotion that traumatic experience, is creating at the time. If you can separate yourself from that intense emotion and look at it and go, wow, what are the lessons here? What are the gold nuggets here? A lot of times those are the seeds that can help you move forward and develop yourself and find that calling that's greater than yourself, like you mentioned. So I love everything you're saying. It's awesome stuff.
Yeah, it truly is, because it's like how you're saying, like you have to become that person. Like it's all about like removing everything that is not you to becoming that. Because I feel like a lot of people, they'll have like their dream board and like all this stuff, and like, but they haven't become that person, right? So like, let's say like visually they, they attract it and they receive it, they can sabotage it. And that's one of the things that a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to sabotage it once I have it, or, how do I not let it go? But the thing is that like that happened to me too, because when we started having success financially, I was like in rooms where I'm like, holy crap, do I even fit in here? Like, I don't want to be in here. Like, they'll say comments to me and I'll get so insecure. Like, why are you wearing that? And this and that. And I'm like, well, what am I wearing? Something wrong? Like I would get so nervous, and I'm like, wait, but I thought I belonged here. I thought I wanted this, right? You want it, but then you're there and you're like, or like losing weight, right? Somebody that loses like 50 pounds, that's not like just nothing. That's a big change in their body, in their clothing. So all of a sudden they're like, I don't feel right. I don't feel right. Like my body feels too thin. Like, no, I'm gonna eat again. You know why? Because they start sabotaging. They start feeling like, no, but this isn't me. So in all reality, they wanted to lose the weight, but they didn't become that person, right? So the same thing with wealth. It's like you have to become that person so that you can only go to the next level there, because otherwise you can start sabotaging. Like, no, they said, this about me when I was in that room, or like, no, I don't like going to those meetings. Well, those meetings, your network is your net worth, so like you need to be in those meetings, you belong in those rooms. And so like you start sabotaging yourself from people that you need to speak to. You start sabotaging from the things that you should be attaining. Why? Because it's like you never became that person, so it's like, it's the same thing when they say like, oh, give everybody $1 million, the poor will be poor again and the rich will be rich again. Why? Because they know something, they've become someone, so it's like, it's so important to become that person day after day, and fit into that vibration, into that energy that you belong in. So that's the big thing for sabotaging. It's just like become that person, visualize. It's a visualization. I know they say it's so woo-woo, but it's so important, because you're seeing yourself as is, right? So it's like, okay, I want my kids to go to this new school because now they're going to go into high school. And I'm like, I really want them to get into that school. I have to visualize myself taking them into that school. Like I see them going in there, they belong there. They're going to have an amazing association. They're going to have good grades, doors of opportunity are going to open for them. Like, and I see that. So when they go to that school, it's just like, oh yeah, this is where we belong. We've always belonged here. It's not like, oh, kids, do this because the kids here are this or that. It's like, no, like we belong here. This is who we've been for the past year. It's nothing new. Like your vibration is already there,
Hmm.
and so like you're not sabotaging anything. You're not sabotaging yourself. You're not sabotaging your body. Your body is very important because your body's always going to catch up, right, with your energy. So like, why do I do what I do? Like, why does my body feel jittery when I'm here? Why does it feel uncomfortable? Because your body's going to catch up to who you are. So if you're trying to fake who you are, your body's going to catch up to it. So it's like, I love this girl, I love this guy, like, no, I'm around them and I act like a fool. All right, well, become the right person for them that you don't
Right.
act like a fool. So it's like, it's very important. So become it, become it, so that when you're there, you own it. It's been yours for the past year, past 2 years, however long it takes for you. you know
Hmm. Yep. You make me think back to the relationship I was in prior to meeting my wife. And it was like a 5-year relationship, and just kept getting worse and worse. And finally, you get so bad, you just have to get out. And spent that summer like really looking at myself, and understood at the time, thankfully, that principle of like I need to become the person that's going
hmm
to attract my ideal mate, because I know the person I am right now, what I just went through is what I attracted. So if I don't want
yeah,
to attract that
yeah.
again, I need to become different. Like that's the common denominator here. It's me. And I remember, that summer doing a ton of inner work and a lot of bioenergetic clearing, and, wrote a list of like, I think it was like 21 or 22 traits that I wanted in an ideal mate. And I was at a bioenergetic conference like that fall, and, did some synchronization work, and, the whole bit. And then Beth and I, we actually knew each other in youth group, which was the funny part, but we connected through Christian Mingle because this goes back to the
Mhm.
intuitive part. Like both Beth and I were like, there's no way we're going to do online dating. That's what we said at the time. Like, if I got to resort to that, like, I'll just be single. I'll be happy with a dog and a cat, and, just not going to go there. Well, my mom and then my wife's sister-in-law, both around the same time, were like, hey, you should try Christian Mingle. And we're like, come on. But my mom would just say it like a couple, 2, 3 times. And it was like one of those things like, I don't know, but for this one, I'm going to listen to my mom. Like, this seems like God speaking through her or something. It just was one of those things like, I'm opposed to it, but I'll try it. And sure enough, we got connected, Beth and I, again from, years before in youth group. And I was a quiet kid in the corner, so I never talked to her at the time anyway. But we ended up hitting it off. And then, first date, and even before first date, I think we both pretty well knew like this was it. And that that whole idea of like I needed to become who I need, and I need the reminder now, like I still need to go through that. Like it's easy to think I've arrived, oh, I've got the girl, or I've got the business, I've got the money, I've got the health, but you have to continue to grow and move forward. And I think that's something that is easy to do in relationships and marriage, is like you get complacent about, oh, I can check that box off. I don't need no longer need to grow. I don't need to grow in romance. I don't need to grow in courtship. You mentioned courtship earlier. Like those things you think I'm there, I can move on and do something different. But those are some of the foundational things that are going to make you successful in whatever you're doing. But I mean, I'm thinking of marriage here, and you touched on so many great points about what you and Sal do, that you're a team and that you work synergistic with each other towards the common goal, and you have that common goal in mind. I think that's something that's lacking from, the world out there, where there's so many people that aren't with the right person, and they aren't on the same page, and they don't have the same goals and dreams, and they haven't probably done enough inner work to really identify who they are and to really get clear about what they want. And they might not, like you, when you were growing up, they didn't have a vision of like what a good relationship could be. They've just settled for whatever society says. And it's just a really important process that, as I said so many times on these podcasts, like I'm saying this because I need to hear this again, because I'm not doing some of this stuff. It's so easy to know it and not do it. But I love one of the other things that you said earlier too, about when you're, the way I've heard it is being unequally yoked. We always hear that about relationships, like, oh, one's a Christian, one's a not. Like in the church, they'd say, oh, don't marry that person because that's, sinning and whatever. And, you know, I've taken that, Jeff Finley and we've always talked about this of being like equally yoked as friends. Like we need to make sure that we're doing, communication, and we're on top of, there's ever any issues between us, that arise, like on top of those things. And like you mentioned with your job, like, are you unequally yoked with your job? Are you in the wrong profession? Is there something that God's calling you to do that's maybe not what you think, but it's truly your calling? Like, all those things you have to look at and do that inner work to figure it out. And there's just, for so many people, we cap off the potential for what life can be in all the areas of our life. You mentioned health. If I lose the weight, I gain it back. Well, you got to do something deeper. And there's a potential there. And I think so many people have never heard the message of you can heal, you can improve, you can experience abundance, you can have financial prosperity and material prosperity, and do it in a way where you're not absorbed with the stuff. It's just, one of our mentors, Dr. Sue Morter, talks about that wealth is basically like a byproduct of who you are. And that if you have inner wealth, then you'll naturally attract outer wealth. Like if you're already wealthy on the inside, then you'll attract the things on the outside that are material prosperity. Even if that's not your goal, that's just a natural byproduct of what's flowing within. So I love the conversation. We could talk forever, I'm sure, about all this stuff.
Yeah. No, it's true. I was with my friend's son. We were driving around and he was, Vanessa, are you rich? And I go, we're all rich. It's just no, and he's like, oh, he's like, but I don't feel like I'm rich. I'm like, well, once you start feeling like you're rich, you're gonna be rich,
There you go.
because it's like, it's like a byproduct, so it's like teaching the kids young, like, no, that is who you are. Like, nobody can tell you otherwise, like, that is who you are, and I kind of felt like when they put on this little superhero costume, it's like, no, this is who I am. My nephew, when he was 5 years old, he used to love walking around with his Superman costume, and like it had this little inflatable thing on the side, and it would blow up the air, right? So now his Superman costume wasn't just like this, it was like huge. But he'd want to go walking down the street and he's like, look, I'm Superman and nobody's going to tell me otherwise, and it's like that faith, like that energetic feel inside, like, look, I am who I am, and like that childlike faith, right? Like, I am who I am, like nobody's going to tell me otherwise. And so it's like your wealth is coming from inside, like your abundance is coming from the inside, your health, you heal yourself, right? Your body is designed to heal itself. You heal yourself from the inside. Everything comes from the joy. You can put two different people in the same situation, and one of them can be happy, and the other one can have like a pissy fit, right? And so it's like, what is the difference? It's their outlook. It's like the joy that they have inside. They're deciding, like, look, you're not going to change that. They have their Superman costume on. Like, I am who I am. It doesn't matter who's on the outside and who's giving their opinion. This is who I believe I am, therefore I am, and so it's like having that shield of protection over yourself that no one can change it. No one can change or move who you are. No circumstance can move who you feel you are. It's so important. And so like, and there's times where like you said, if you're not equally yoked, you gotta reevaluate yourself. It's like, why am I here? What am I doing? Am I living out of fear, out of lack? Out of like, what is it? Scarcity for the beliefs of myself, like, what is it? Why are you where you're at? Because we all create our own world. Everything that you have, you created that. Everything that you have, you created it. So it's just like, you want to create something else, you have the power to create it. You have the power to move, so it's up to us to create our life. We have the power. We're such powerful beings if we only believe. If we only understood and are aware of how powerful we really are and what creators we are, like, you can create anything. It's really beautiful. Really, it is. The power that's been given to us as humans, as to attract, to dream, to visualize, like, all of that is just so beautiful for us. Such a beautiful gift.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I know. I think that's one of the big things that you wish you almost like came with a manual, the owner's manual, like, oh, I can open up to the later chapters. Oh, this is how I use my energy. This is how I attract things. Like, we don't have that, we weren't taught that in school. There's no college course. Like, you have to kind of be around the right circles that are actually going to like open your mind up to that. And if you haven't ever heard of it, it's like, well, what kind of wacko is this? But it's the foundation of everything. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not our physical, we are the spiritual, and we go so much beyond this. And so as you've been talking, I want to jump into like our kids and stuff, because I know ever since we've had kids, this way of being has always been a part of my wife and I's lifestyle, whether it's, healing the common colds naturally or just speaking different words into them. And, certainly not like we've been perfect along the way, but it is amazing to see like the consciousness that they've grown up in, different from the rest of the world, and how you can open their eyes to so much, and you can understand their development at a deeper level and how to, stoke the fire of greatness within them. And, there's been a lot of things that my wife and I have done, from like, we did home births, and we, chose not to do immunizations and those kind of things. And we did a thing called elimination communication when they were like right away, like they were going to the bathroom on the toilet. I've got pictures to prove it of both kids like day one, and there's just so many things that are like counter culture, but it's like when you understand what they're all about, it's like, no, this is like a deeper consciousness of what to do with kids. And it's not just about their dumb little blobs of cells. Like, they are amazing teachers, and they're there to reveal things within you that you need to heal. They're a litmus test in that way of like, oh my gosh, I'm getting angry at my child. What is this bringing up in me? And it's not that they're a bad kid. It's something within me that I'm probably projecting on them from my childhood, or for something within me that I haven't healed up yet. This is an opportunity for me to heal it. And so there's been a lot of those little things that, we've done and learned, and, to continue to cultivate that. So I'd love to hear, your journey through all of the things that we've talked about so far, and how that's, gone into your kids. You touched on a little bit, but I'd love to expand on that a little bit more, and just, what's it been like raising kids in this consciousness?
Yeah. Oh man, I love my kids. Like honestly, like I've been trying to tell Sal like to adopt more. Like I'll have a village if I could. Like I don't know if you know me. Like it's just like, oh my gosh, I'll have a village. And so so with my kids, they were born in LA, and we were living at the garage when both of them were born. And then, thankfully we were able to move out. Finally, we were able to move out, and then kind of decide like, hey, what are we gonna build? Like, we need to do something incredible here. We have a blank slate. Like, is this the journey we want? And so, that's where we're like, yeah, we're gonna hunker down on entrepreneurship. We're just gonna do business. Like, we see that there's no cap on your money. Like, if you get it, like you can just go for it as much as you want, right? Like, it's available. And so we're like, that's what we're doing. And for my kids, no one had taught me this, but living by intuition, guided by intuition, I was like, I want to homeschool them. And so we ended up moving to Florida, and that's where I started homeschooling them. And there was not a big homeschool support here. So we ended up actually meeting some friends out in Tennessee, like life aligns you. So we met some friends in Tennessee, and they were all homeschooling their kids. And I'm like, I want to be here, So that's when we moved to Tennessee for, I think, about 7 years, and we started off homeschooling them. And through that journey, I just also did a lot of holistic moves with them. A lot of things that we learned as adults. I was like, I just want them to know, like, why do they have to be 20 years old? Like, they're little sponges, like kids are sponges. Like, and to be able to think that, like, oh, they're too young to learn this, it's like you're putting a limitation on your kids. Because like when you go to Europe, these kids have no like 5 languages. Like, I mean, there's 12-year-olds trading. Like, kids are smart, they're so smart. And so like for me, like I wanted to teach them a lot of the things that I was already being taught in my late 20s. I'm 36, so it was just like through that time I was just like, I had already learned so much personal development, so much on reading, so much on meditation and prayer, on my sound bowls. Like, I always have sound bowls around the house. It's like, look, just sit down and just feel your sound bowl, like just feel good, And so it's just like all those things, like how to ground themselves. Emotions, like emotions are so healthy. Emotions is your body telling you like, hey, I need to release something. And so you need to be in tune with your emotion. And a lot of people fear their emotion. Like, why am I angry? Why am I sad? All these, unless it's happy. Oh, yeah, I'm happy, so everything is good. Like, everything in your body is an emotion. And like, you need to learn to release your emotion, right? So like, if you're holding down to anger, to frustration, like that's where people are getting sick. They're stressed out. They don't know how to release their emotions, right? So like, for my kids was like, what is a healthy way for them to release emotion? Like, hey, you're sad, you want to cry, go ahead and cry and let me know when you're done. Like, I'm not gonna get angry because my kid is crying. Like, obviously there's some type of emotion there that's trapped, and it's like they need to release it, right? So like, all those things, like you said, that it's like, man, we weren't taught all this. Like, my mom would be like, shut up, stop crying, stop talking, or this and that,
Mhm.
so different, and like, I'm just so grateful. But with all that, I'm sure that they're gonna grow up with some type of like argument with mom and their kids. We all have like some type of trauma. I don't know what their trauma is, but I'm not gonna be like immune to any trauma. It's like, come on, like there's probably gonna be something. I looked at them a certain way, and there's like, my mom looked at me a certain way, and therefore I carry this trauma. Like, you never know what happens
Oh
in
yeah.
subconscious. right? What it picks up. So all we can do is our best. You can't feel like a horrible person. Like you said, we're a mirror. So as much as they're growing in age, we're growing in ourselves. You know, we're going through our trauma that we're finally healing and that we're finally getting in touch with. So like we are mirrors to our children. And so it's like, you know, I mean, our children are mirrors to us. And so, you know, there's things that it's like, why does that frustrate me? Or like, why am I acting like this right now? It's just like, well, what's happening? You know, like emotion really talks to you. So it's like knowing how to process all that is so healthy. But like, yeah, so with my kids, I homeschooled them and we learned to just kind of be together all the time and healthy in a healthy way. You know, I didn't have that growing up. It was like there's too many people in a house. I mean, there was a time where we had like 11 people in a 2-bedroom house, you know, because it's like us Mexicans, you know, we just like love to a little bit too much. And so marrying Sal, he's like a single child who like he was a one kid, you know, nobody ever in the home, and I'm like, well, I have a posse, you know, we're a wolf pack. Like, we're just like, it's a lot of us all the time. We say you're coming over for dinner, it's 40 people. Like, that's just the way we do it, you know, which is fun, beautiful. But, you know, we grew through that, like, just how to meet each other halfway. Cause I know for him, it was a lot. And then for me, it was lonely. So we had to like meet halfway. I was like, I can't just sit here in the house by myself all day. Like, this is so lonely and boring. I'm used to like 20 people in and out of the house all the time, you know? So, with all that said, like my kids, it's just been such a beautiful journey seeing their growth, seeing where they're at. Now they go to a Montessori school, and now they're going to go to a different, like more private school with, which is bigger because Montessori schools are very small, you know, because I wanted that smooth transition from homeschooling to, you know, actually being around a bunch of kids every day. And so like it is a transition. I didn't want to just throw them in the, you know, on the ice cold water and like, here, you're in public school now, like figure it out.
Right.
So we've had them in Montessori school, and we found an amazing one out here that goes up to 8th grade, because usually they are only like a couple grades from elementary school. So it's very entrepreneurial driven, it's very self-taught. So I've liked that, because what I feel with school, and you know, everyone's entitled to their own opinion and stuff, but like what I feel with school is that they don't teach you a lot of how being self-taught. And I think that when you go out into the world and you can be self-taught, that is a powerful, powerful tool. You know, like even changing something in my refrigerator. I know I can call somebody, but my brother tells me like, just go on YouTube and figure it out. Like there's so many things that you can just learn on your own, and there's YouTube and there's books, and it's just like anything really, like you want to learn, you can learn it. And so it's like, I wanted them to have that tool in their hands that, look, as an entrepreneur mindset, you always have to be able to be self-taught. Like there's no limitations. Anything you want to learn, if you sit down and you do your hours and you learn the skill set, like you will learn it and you can apply it, you know? So a lot of times with the public school, for me, it was like, unless there's a teacher there teaching me, like I can't even read the book by myself. Like it was so like, they didn't prepare you to go out into the real future, you know, to go out into the real world. So that is one thing that has been always been important for me, for my kids, is like learn to be self-taught. You want to learn something, sit down and learn it, you know, you can. And like a lot of people, they fear to like learn different skills. It's like, if I'm a doctor, I have to stay in this lane, and if, you know, I'm a trader, I have to stay in this lane. Like we're always learning all lanes. We're like, look, if that's interesting, like my kids do jujitsu, they do piano, they go to school. I'm like, you can do it all. And it's not that I'm trying to pack out their schedule so they have nothing, but it's being able to use your time wisely, right? So it's like, for me, if I want to learn more about trading, I'm not going to sit around in TikTok looking at cooking show for the next 2 hours. You know, it's like, I'm going to go and sit and learn about trading. And so with my kids, it's like, you have all these hours in the day. Like, what are you going to do with it? Like, yes, you need to have the time where you can chill, relax, you know, recover from the day, but then there's also some hours that, you know, you can be doing something so effective, you know? So like, they're little, they have the energy, you know, as you get older, like hopefully your energy doesn't drop because that's your health, right? But like sometimes it kind of does. But teaching them that they can learn as much as they want, and like just being self-taught, I think that that's very powerful for children, you know, that they can learn anything, anytime it's available, you know? Yeah.
Yep, totally. Yeah, we're in a journey right now where we've done the homeschooling thing, and really hasn't been, for me, I've been overly busy to really, you know, tag team it with my wife. And for her, she's been realizing like, hey, this isn't really what I wanted to do. Like it sounded good on paper, but like the mechanics day to day, like, not really sure. So earlier last year, I'm like, let's look at other options. So we started exploring, and she had a friend or a mentor a few years back tell us about Waldorf education, which is, I think, kind of like Montessori in ways. And so we checked that school out, and the kids a couple weeks ago went for like a 3-day trial there, and we're prepping for next year for like in the fall. Well,
Yeah.
my son, they're like, no, if you guys can like get your app in and like do funding, like he can finish out the school year. And we're like, oh, okay, sweet. So we finished paperwork last night for the application, and we're right at that point of him going into that. And we're really excited about that because the Waldorf system it's such a different way of schooling. I mean, the teacher goes with them from, I think, like kindergarten or first grade all the way through middle school. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of like in the building, I think there's probably still a couple hundred kids in the building, but there's like 3 to 6 year olds are together and like one like kind of grade. I mean, there might be I mean, there's 3 different classrooms of that age group, but they're all kind of together. And then they do like the one day that we went to visit, the 3 to 6 year olds were baking muffins for the middle schoolers, and we're going to take it to them. And then like the middle schoolers come down. The one day my son was visiting, the middle schoolers came down and put on a skit about like how to handle conflict. And so there's
Mhm.
like a lot of what do you want to say, cross pollinating, I guess you could say, between the older kids and the younger kids, which you normally don't get in like, especially a public school setting. You're confined to a grade or two above and below, and that's it. And you rarely see the older kids, and there's no intentional learning and like cross learning between those grades and like serving each other in the ways that you can at your age. Like, I think that's amazing. And the emphasis of the Waldorf education is not, let's score high in your ACT so you can get a good college education and make good money. It's how do we nurture you and how do we develop you emotionally? And we incorporate movement and song, and like you're just developing a more well-rounded person. So we're super excited about our new journey in all this because it's so much more in alignment with, what we want out of our kids, and to be able to just give them a different perspective on life, and what we feel is like kind of a leg up on life from going the traditional route. Like, hey, if we can set them up to be yes, know more stuff in the traditional schooling sense, but be a more capable adult and thrive more in the world, and hopefully go through a few less challenges because of the intentional things we're doing. Like you say, we're never going to save our kids from having a bad day or scars or subconscious blocks that we've created. I mean, we've still done things out of line as parents, but doing everything we can to put them in the best position possible. And it's been a cool process up to this point, just knowing where we're going. I can't wait for them to get started with this education and see what it does for them. And just growing on so many layers and levels of their being is going to be really cool to see unfold.
No, I agree because we did look into Waldorf as well. And the reason that I love it is because, like, my daughter, they're very similar, the Montessori and the Waldorf. And so my daughter was struggling in math, and the teacher noticed that, and she was like, oh, let me change you to a different package. And now she's thriving. Like, you know
Mm,
what I mean?
yeah.
It's everybody learns different. And so it's like a lot of times, like for parents, like we're struggling with the kids learning or reading or doing math a certain way. And it's like really, I think adjusting a few things, like or adjusting the way they learn, like learning how they learn, the same for us. We need to learn how we learn. Like, are we visuals? Are we readers? Are we listen? Like how do we learn and then learn that way instead of like, I like to read. So like I can read something and then I want to watch the video. But if I'm just watching the video, I'm like, oh, but I need to see it on the paper. So that's why like audiobooks, like I don't like to do audiobooks. I need to be reading the book so I can highlight and go back and then like that's just the way that I learn. But everybody's different. A lot of people they love to do audiobooks. And so because if they're just reading, maybe they get bored, right? So like it's very different. And to be able to nurture your child and set them up for success, you set them up for success, you're setting yourself up for success. And that's what the employees as well, right? You set up your employees for success, you're going to get set up for success. And so like that's the same thing with kids. Like everybody learns different. It's like telling an alligator to climb a tree. Like you can't tell an alligator to climb a tree. A monkey's gonna, and then they're gonna look at the monkey like, how did you do that so quickly? Like you're so amazing. And then they start this comparing system. And it's like there's no comparing, man. Like we learn different. And so like with my kids, I tell them everybody learns different, and there's no comparing because we're all different. So like you do the things that the alligator does and let the monkey do the things that the monkey does. But we're all going to accomplish what we need to accomplish here. And so like just fueling their talents, like whatever they're not great at, like don't emphasize that. Don't mock them on that. It's just like, look, whatever they're talented in that, like feel that, you know, the way that they learn, feel that. So you're setting them up for success, you know. So I think that's, I love these schools, you know, Waldorf and Montessori for that reason. Yeah, that they really set up the kids for success. So
Yeah. I know we sat down with like one of the administrators and like what would be my son's second grade teacher like last week or the week before, I forget now. But you know, we laid out a bunch of questions we had had beforehand, and like I was just so impressed with their answers to a lot of the questions that were even exceeded my expectations. Like we already went in knowing what generally to expect, and we already had a good sense of what the school was and how it differed and how it was very much in alignment with what we were looking for. And then they just even took it to another level and like even ways that the parents can interact with the school and do things. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is just such a cool community. And we're just really excited about it. It'd be really cool to get into. So one of the other things I want to chat about is curious. I know we had the privilege of speaking at the event last summer for you guys. And I know the day before you did the women's uh,
mhm.
group and women's retreat thing. And I know you mentioned already sound and sound bowls and meditation and prayer. And for me, you know, alternative health and the mindset work and different techniques are a big part of my life. So I'd love for you to share, you know, what have you found in that way that is maybe ways to help people overcome the beliefs and accelerate the inner work and or just do it more effectively, whatever, however you want to say it. I know some people have different ways of phrasing it, but you know, what have you found, you know, for yourself, or what do you observe in other people as a leader of other people that helps them, you know, do that inner work and work through those things and do the things that we're talking about, you know, in our conversation today of finding your deeper calling and getting out of your own way.
Yeah, there's so much, you know, I think that like everything that I've learned has been years, you know, like also, you know, at age 17, I started going to church. And that's where I met Sal and we, you know, we work with the youth and all that. So it's been long time now, right? That I've been like just feeling myself in the spiritual aspect of the church, but then also finding things outside of the church, you know, like that, like the sound bowl, because you're not going to go to church and they're going to be doing sound baths, you know what I mean? Or like go on meditations or like get out of here. So, but I know that those things have impacted me. So I really try to be driven with what pulls me, right? Because everybody's different. So if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe don't do that, you know. But if you feel incredible after a sound bath meditation, and all a sound bath is, for those people that don't know, it's these crystal bowls that produce a certain vibration throughout your body. So there's different vibrations, like we're made out of water, right? So like our body is what, like, I don't know, huge percentage of water, and so is the planet. I don't know numbers, but so when these vibrations start entering your body, it's calming that, it's changing that vibration, right? So these sound bowls are just so powerful in that. And so like you can put a few drops of water into a sound bowl, and as you're creating the vibration, you're going to see different movements in the water, you know. And if you look at it through a microscope, you can see different shapes taken in the water, right? So like that's inside of our body. Like we are energy, like we talked about, we're vibration, right? So if you want to change your vibration, let's say we're going through this stressful week or something, and it's like, man, I need to calm down, I need to go into a place where, you know, maybe I put sound bath music, or I use my sound bowls, or I call one of my friends that can guide me through a meditation to just calm myself. Because emotion can like put a veil on what reality really is, you know. And that's why they say, like, look, don't talk when you're emotional. Like if I came in here and I was upset, like our conversation is going to be very different. You know, if I come in here and I'm super happy, our conversation is going to be very different, and you're going to feel my energy of joy, of great, and you know, this was awesome. If I'm upset, you're going to be like, man, I'm never having her here again, right? Like that was not a good experience. So like your vibration is everything, like your energy is everything. And so that's how you're going out into the world. And so if you have a meeting and you're like, man, I want to go in there with the best energy, like, man, calm yourself, give yourself 10 minutes. There's different breath techniques that you can do to calm your mind, to steady your mind, to ground yourself. If you're like, look, I had a tough time at work. Some people, they want to go and like watch TV for like 3 hours before spending time with your family. Like that transition is not a healthy transition. It's like you can literally come home from work, sit in your car, do a breathwork meditation, steady your mind, and then come into the home to where now your family is getting a better quality of yourself. You know, because those are transitions. The person that you are at work is a different person you're going to be with your spouse. Is a different person you're going to be with with your child. So you need to learn these transitions, that you're going into work, that you're going into your spouse, like that you're going with your kids. Like it's very, very important, you know, because that you want them to get the best of you. And so a lot of times people are like, I'm just struggling at work and I don't want to work anymore because I want to spend more time with my kids. Well, you get home and you honestly still have like 4 to 5 hours with your kids, but you're watching TV. So it's like, what are you choosing, right? So I'm not going to get down that rabbit hole, but like that's why the spiritual work is so important, because who are you giving your, like, what version of yourself are you giving out into this world, right? And so who are you? How do you ground yourself? Like all those things are so important. And so for me, I always wanted to continue to grow spiritually, even if I didn't have a church, because we've moved. And so it's like, you know, what church do I go to, this and that, or, you know, it's like, I don't want that to stop my growth. So like everything spiritual, it's really up to the individual. Like sometimes I was reading some spiritual books that I'm like, I don't know about that, but we respect each other's journey because that's his journey. I'm like, who am I to tell him, look, don't learn that because I'm your wife and you shouldn't be learning about that. It's like, look, learn about it and then tell me, and then let's move on. You know what I mean? Like everyone can learn something different in their journey, as long as you're still connected and giving each other that space. You know, I'm speaking for spouses, like give each other that space to learn in your journey, because we're all going to be called different times to different things. Like, so you shouldn't stop that, you know. But like for me in my journey, I've always like I've looked for people who did, like one of my good friends, she does like the gong meditations, and she's taught me a lot about the gongs, and those are very powerful vibrations. They're so much more powerful than the sound bowls, you know. But what does that do? It's like we have this mind, this brain, right, called the monkey brain, and it just doesn't stop sometimes. And you're like, just stop, like just stop talking, just stop like feeding me this or whatever. So like those beautiful gongs, they stop that so that you can just be still. And there's times that like if just being still without thoughts for 10 minutes can be more than like 8 hours of sleep. So I mean, with the body's so stressed out, is always digesting food, is always thinking, is always like, do this, do that, do this, that. So to be able to stop it, that's the spiritual work, right? To stop it, to connect with yourself, to connect with who we really are, which is pretty funny because at the end of the day, it's like we are someone, and then society creates something else, and all we're doing is just coming back to that person that we really are. That's all you're doing. It's like coming back to your being, and that's where your intuition, that's where your dreams come in, that's where your visions come in. Like, oh, I got this, like, you know, like breaking point here. Like, oh, I saw this. Like, it's just very powerful to really have that lifestyle of spirituality where you're learning to just ground yourself, because emotions are real and emotions are powerful, but they can blind reality. You know, they can blind what, you know, where we really should, you know, like be going or be doing, because of I'm tired or I'm angry or now I'm happy, now I'm going to do this. It's like, oh, that is just a veil. So to calm your emotions and really be steady is a very powerful thing to do. So I don't know, does that kind of answer like on the spiritual? Yes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's been exactly what my wife and I have experienced too. You know, there's been times where I've had more of a superiority complex about like, I know the things that are right and your stuff's not as good, which is a horrible thing to do. And I've learned from that. And, you know, she's done different techniques than I've done, and we've been around enough alternative practitioners and healers and energy workers, and they all have the techniques that they love and that they swear by. You know, the longer I've observed that, it's like, oh, okay, like there isn't like one technique. It's what, you know, whatever vibration you're at, that technique is the exact right thing for you, at least at that moment in time. And it may shift over time. You might find something that's better, works more effectively at the new place you're at, but that's more about it. Like you have to do that discovery. There's no like, you know, just it's not like the what do they called it, the red box or something where you go up to like the movie and just pull it out. It's not like every, you know, every gas station you just go find the right energy work for you. Like it's a discovery process, and I think that's, you know, you're hitting right on like the key things here. Like there's no external cheat sheet, I guess you could say, or cheat code for how to do this. Like it's just a discovery process, it's a journey process. You know, you've got to figure it out for you. And, you know, you go through, I mean, I've done a lot of energy work that it's like, I feel nothing. I don't feel any different. I've had some that are just like, oh my gosh, this is the most profound thing I've ever done. So, and then you tell it to somebody else and they're like, well, I tried it too and it didn't do anything for me. And you're like, well, maybe did I, you know, did not work as I thought for me, you know, like, but you just, it's that process. You got to find the individual. tool that works good for you. And, there's no shortcut for that, I've discovered. So I love that you're saying the same thing that we've experienced too. And, using the intuitive sense to figure out like, what do I need next, and putting that out like, hey, I need another tool. I need another resource. I need, maybe it's a principle, maybe it's an energy technique, maybe it's a, sound, maybe who knows what it is, but putting that out there and then not being too attached to when it shows up. And then usually it shows up when you least expect it. And then you've got what you need and you can move on with what it, intended to do for you. So I love all that. So another key thing here I want to touch on before we end our time together is, it's so funny that the podcast that I've done, I mean, my passions are money and the inner work. And I've had chiropractors on. We've talked about, weight loss, and the conversation leading into that was like, oh, I'm probably he's going to talk about exercise. He's going to talk about what diets and foods. And all he could talk about was the inner work. Like, man, you got to do the inner work if you want weight loss to stick. And it's been funny even with our conversation, because we're talking about, the journey of success, and it's all back to the inner work. And understanding that is such a vital foundation for all of us to build on, to go to higher heights and achieve the things that we are called to do. And so along that journey, I'm curious if you've had things above the inner work, like marketing, like mentorship, leadership skills, ways to manage money. Like, if there been some of those key things that you have felt like, okay, I've got this big foundation of the inner work, I've gotten myself to a certain vibration, the success is coming in where maybe it wasn't before I had that foundation. But now that I'm here, are there things that you needed to learn or do or acquire that maybe weren't just on the inner work side that helped you solidify that kind of newfound place of abundance and then build on it? Were there anything there that you guys have had that have been, vital in that?
Yeah, we're huge on courses. Like I've paid when we first started, we paid over $20,000 to go to a marketing event, and we had no money. We were like literally borrowing money. So like I'm a huge believer of like, man, you gotta get, like, how do they say, like, scrape your elbows a little bit, like you gotta get in there, you know what I mean? Like you gotta make it work. Like it's not just gonna come, like nothing came to me for free. Like I had to put in the work, like yes, the inner work to know that I'm worthy of it, and then my faith and all of that, and like becoming it, not sabotaging my success. But like also it's like, man, we had to pay some courses. We've also had somebody help us pay like 6 figures of real estate courses. Like because we worked as a partnership, so this is when we were first starting. We're like, look, we don't have money, but we'll work, so let's be partners. And so we were like, we partnered in that. And then we've also yeah, like I said, we had to come up with like over 20 grand for like a marketing event. And like I just bought another course. It's a really pricey course for trading, but I'm learning because I always want to learn, and it's just like, I have one of the best traders in the house, but it's like, I can't sit here and have him like, oh, just teach me for the next 3 hours. Like, it's like, I want to learn, and I want to learn at my own pace. And like, I have to put my money in there to, to be able to like start. And then also like, I've paid like mentorships and leader, like I've paid for mentorships in leadership, so that I've also joined this other thing for like, gosh, it was like a year, and it was like over 30 grand. Like I've paid my dues to like learn from these people, because some people you're not going to get in that room unless you paid your dues, and these are just some of the least expensive like mentors out there. Like there's some mentors that are multiple 6 figures if you want to learn from them, like, but you have to get in there. Like you have to pay your dues to get into those rooms sometimes and to learn from the best. And like there is so much that you can learn on your own, from like being self-taught, from like failures and successes. You're like, oh man, I learned that, I'm not going to do that again. Or I learned that and that worked for me, but there's only so far you can get there until you have a coach, until you have a mentor that can kind of provide a shortcut to where you're trying to go, but it does come with an investment. Like we do invest into coaches, into mentors, we do invest into classes, and we're always learning, and so like, and then we also learn so much from our failures. Like we've blown so many trading accounts. Like for those of you that trade, like, man, one time I funded a live trading account. I was like, I'm gonna put like 3 grand in here, a very small account. And then the next day there was FOMC news event and it blew my account within 3 seconds. And I was like, well, there goes my money. Guess what am I gonna do next time? Like that was a lesson learned. Like I'm not gonna trade that again. And so it's just like there's things that you learn by making the mistake, by failing, and I love those lessons in life, but there's also lessons that you learn from other people, by getting into those rooms, by having to invest into things. So like if you don't have a coach, like there is, and also there is sometimes that you do make an investment and you're like, man, this isn't what I thought it would be. It's like, look, on to the next. You're learning, you're trying to grow, you gotta be willing to get in there. And like some things are just not for you. Like you said, sometimes you're in a space and you're like, you know what, this isn't for me. Like, okay, move on to the next, man. Like, let's go. Like you're in it to win it, like you have to just keep going. And once you start getting stuck, like that's getting stagnant, that's already like a pond that's just going to grow mildew and all that crap. Like it's not going to be a flowing river, and if you want to be a flowing river in abundance in your health and your wealth with your family, like you just have to keep going. You have to keep going with learning and growing and just, hey, life, you fail, you succeed, you fail, you succeed. And that's just the way it goes, but yes, we invest into courses, we invest into learning from people. I don't know, us, we travel every other week. Like we're traveling all the time. Like traveling is not easy. I just got back from LA and I was out there, and when you're out in 3 hours in the West Coast and I live in the East Coast, like people want to hang out till midnight. That's 3 a.m. for me. And then I come home and it's like, all right, now kids want to go to Tampa, so we're leaving here shortly. And it's just like, that's life sometimes, and it's tiring, but like, you invest into friendships, you invest in traveling and getting into rooms that you want to be in, and being around people that you want to be in, being around people that fuel you, and that's life, and that's success right there, So don't be afraid to put some money into courses. Don't be afraid to put money to get into rooms that, that you're going to learn from people, because that's very important, So you never know who you're going to meet in rooms that you're paying for. Like maybe it's your next business partner. You guys are going to have this bomb idea and it's going to be a $1 billion idea. You're going to work with Elon Musk. I don't know. Like you just never know. Like you can have wild dreams, and it's like, you don't know what those rooms get you into, So be willing to invest in them.
Yep,
Yeah.
totally agree. Yeah, I'm thinking back to, about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years now, we had done some, put some money in like these passive courses and stuff for, making money, crypto and things. You lose money in some of those. Obviously, a lot of those have gone down. And I know Finley and I had come to the conclusion, like, we just need to maybe learn trading for ourselves. It was kind of one of those things, like it was just a conclusion and it just aligned. Like instead of handing it over to somebody else and they're running away with our money, like let's figure out how to do this ourselves. And then it was a short time later, I think through a friend of a friend, you guys, Sal and the team, came onto our radar screen, like, oh my gosh. And then, Finley and I decided to make the commitment to go down to Miami November of 22. And just so happens we meet Ryan and hit it off with him. He introduces us to Sal. And, I think back to like just what we've discussed here in our hour plus of talking, like how that's aligned things in our lives and how we've been connected, and the great things that have come from that in our lives. And hopefully we've added value in yours and reciprocated that. Like that's been an amazing thing. And it's been exactly what we've been talking about here, is like, we've been doing the inner work. We've grown, we've made mistakes, we've come to conclusions, we've put out a request, it's been answered. Those people, places, opportunities, situations have come in, and it's taken us to the next level en route to our, greater vision. And it's just been a amazing thing. So I want to thank you for, not only your time today, but just it's been amazing getting to know you and Sal and the opportunities that have come from that. And just I want to thank you for sharing your journey with us here today. And, I know that people listening to this now and in the future, you've shared so many gold nuggets and so many powerful lessons, and what somebody needs that, if they're listening to this going, I wonder what it takes to get there. Well, Vanessa, you laid out exactly like this is the path to get there. It may look differently than what you or I go through, but the core principles are there: working on yourself and not giving up and keeping the vision and being around people that are at your level and above, and being willing to pay to play, and all those things are the recipe to get you there. So Thank you for your time, Vanessa. Is there any way, if somebody loves your energy and wants to connect with you, are you doing anything? Is there ways to connect with you that I could put in the description here for somebody to, connect with you?
Just my Instagram, Miss
Okay.
Vanessa. Yeah, Miss Vanessa
Cool. All
Leto.
right. Well, I'll get that link here when we stop recording, and then I'll make sure that goes in the description. So, 'cause I'm sure there'll be some people that resonate with you and want to connect with you and know where that goes. So, thanks for your time here, Vanessa, and we'll look forward to connecting again soon.
Guys, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me.